In the history of the world, there have been wars. And during the Second World War, people organized themselves to defend.
So guys, in this video, we are talking about a digital pan-African moments. This is where narratives are no longer filtered through Western media. You know what has always been happening from the time immemorial or memorial, something like that. So guys, something very unusual is happening across the entire Africa. Not in parliaments, not in embassies, but on mobile phones, in our markets, and in the streets. So there is a young military leader from Burkina Faso, and that is Ibrahim Traoré. He has become a symbol, not just a president. So Africans are 100% rallying behind him. What about the West? They are actually watching very closely and they are very nervous. Do you know why? Let's watch these videos first and then I'll be back with more analysis.
There's a good reason why the West is determined to kill Ibrahim Traoré. And that is because he's a young black man, articulate, big ideas, cares passionately for his people. So he has declared that not one single person deserves to be homeless. Not a single person in his country will be homeless. So what did he do? He began building free homes for people of Burkina Faso. This is something even America has never been able to achieve. The number of homeless people living in America are so many, you can't even count them. It's the same all over Europe. Homelessness is such a blight on their conscience. And yet, Ibrahim Traoré has declared that no single person in Burkina Faso will be homeless under his watch because he's building homes for each and every single person. The money that he will make from kicking out all those mining companies that leached off the country, that money is not promises, by the way. He's building them. They're visible. People can see them. People who want to see what he's doing, he's actually building them. This guy is a threat to the West.
Yo, I think the entire world needs to bring their attention around to Ibrahim Traoré. From 2022, Ibrahim has stepped up from being a soldier of Burkina Faso to being the interim president. Now, even though it sounds like a good thing, here's the problem. Ibrahim has made strides in Burkina Faso that other leaders in 10, 20, 30 years didn't make and wouldn't have made. Now, this is a problem because Ibrahim is making sure that his country, Burkina Faso, is using only their resources to build up their country. No export, no external use. And since he is doing it, other African nations are starting to take notice, and Western leadership is starting to take notice as well. So now, I've already started to come across United States and Israel propaganda against him. And this also being important because they're simply lying on his name. Countries all over the world, including the ones under Western elite leadership, are saying that Ibrahim is approaching his presidency from a dictator perspective, and that's not true at all. The same thing that he wanted is the same thing that JFK and Gaddafi wanted. Money not backed by central banking systems, natural born rights for the citizens of their country, and lastly, world fucking peace. But as long as the elites of the Western countries seize control in the Middle East, for all the natural resources and everything else surrounding it, every single time a leader shows up and wants to do good by the people, by the country, by the nations of Africa, they will, unfortunately, be silenced, as they have already attempted to take Ibrahim out 16 times. And that's within 3 years of him being the president. Now, y'all go ahead and add the math up. Does that make sense? No. Seriously, y'all, we must please pay attention to this, and we must place our hands over him and pray for him because he's doing the Lord's work, showing these African nations that we do not need Western power within our government to get things done, because they do not allow us within our own standards to feed our children, to use our own resources, to build our own homes, to actually find a way for our nations to strive. That's what Ibrahim is getting done right now, and he wants other African nations and other black people in general to join him. And again, They do not want that. We need more strong people to awaken, see the truth, and then stand on it like Ibrahim. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this entire topic in the comments. Love y'all.
Sure, Langley, can you talk about why we care about what's happening in Africa right now? Why are we spending the money we're spending there?
For access and influence. I say that a number of countries are at the tipping point of actually being captured by the Russian Federation, as they are spreading some of their false narratives across Libya. And from a strategic answer piece, access influence across the whole Maghreb, that is NATO's southern flank. We need to be able to maintain access and influence across the Maghreb from Morocco all the way to Libya. The PRC and Russia are also remaining exploitative where possible and coercive when necessary. They want that ground. They want power projection capabilities. So for the most part, the rest of the continent is also for mining concessions, whether it be gold or rare earth minerals. Both of them have a long-range plan. But I think at the accelerated pace, the Russian Federation is really trying to take over Central Africa as well as the Sahel.
Captain Ibrahim Traoré has just exposed the biggest scam in African development history. And in doing so, he has humiliated an entire generation of African leaders who claim they have no choice but to take loans.
Yes, you heard that right. Captain Ibrahim Traoré has just exposed the biggest scam in African development. He has proven, with receipts and results on the ground, that every excuse we've heard for Africa's underdevelopment is a damned lie. Here are the facts that should make every African's blood boil. When Traoré's government inherited the Faso-Mabo Highway project, a project that had been sitting on paper for over a decade, they discovered something absolutely obscene. Foreign companies, mostly European, had submitted proposals to build a basic 2x2 lane highway. The cheapest bid, 1,032 billion FCFA. But wait, it gets worse. The financing terms required 10 years just to complete construction, with loan repayments stretching 50 to 60 years into the future. Let me repeat that. 60 years of debt payments for a 2-lane highway that would be outdated before the first loan instalment was even paid. Traoré didn't hold back his disgust. You have to be unconscious to condemn generations not yet born to 50 to 60-year loans to build a 2x2 lane highway that will be outdated in a short time. Unconscious, that's the word he used, and he's absolutely right. But here's the part that should terrify corrupt African leaders everywhere. Traoré didn't just complain about this robbery. He completely dismantled the entire scheme and exposed it for the fraud it has always been. When Traoré's team said, "Actually, we want to build a modern 4x2 lane highway, not this outdated garbage," do you know what happened? They were mocked. Foreign contractors laughed. Some Burkinabe elites, those mental slaves who worship everything foreign and doubt everything African, said it was not reasonable for a country like Burkina Faso to dream so big. The foreign companies came back with new estimates, over 3,000 billion FCFA. The message was clear: stay in your place, Africa, accept mediocrity, take our loans, stay in debt forever, and be grateful. But this is where Ibrahim Traoré revealed himself to be cut from different cloth than the suited thieves who parade as leaders across our continent. His response was revolutionary in its simplicity. We are not going to enter those schemes. We decided to do it ourselves because we have confidence in our young engineers. We have confidence in the potential of Burkinabe. Read that again. While other African presidents are on their knees in Paris, Washington and Beijing, begging for loans and signing away mining rights, Traoré said, "We'll do it ourselves." Now here's where it gets absolutely beautiful and simultaneously infuriating, because what Traoré has achieved exposes just how badly Africa has been played. Today, the Faso-Mabo Highway construction site is the largest highway project in Africa in terms of equipment deployment. Over 100 bulldozers working simultaneously. Traoré himself confirmed, "I can say that the site is unique in Africa. There is no highway site like this that mobilizes so much equipment. There isn't." Traoré gave his engineers 2 months to complete the land clearing. In just 40 days, they had completed over 70% of the work. By February 15th, 2026, they will finish, ahead of schedule. The pace, Traoré noted, is also unmatched in Africa. And here's the kicker that should make every corrupt African leader sweat. We already have everything at our disposal. All the machines, everything necessary is there. All that remains is to buy fuel and bitumen, otherwise everything necessary is there. No crippling foreign debt. No 60-year loan slavery. No kickbacks to politicians. No inflated contracts to benefit foreign companies. Just Burkinabe people, Burkinabe engineers, Burkinabe equipment, building Burkinabe infrastructure for Burkinabe benefit. The implications are staggering and damning. If Burkina Faso, one of the poorest countries on earth, facing active insurgency, landlocked with limited resources, can build modern highway infrastructure without foreign debt, then what excuse do Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, South Africa, or any other African nation have? The answer is simple and ugly: corruption. Let me explain exactly how the loan scam works, because Traoré has exposed it perfectly. Step 1. African country needs infrastructure, road, hospital, airport, etc. Step 2. Foreign companies submit massively inflated bids, typically 300 to 500% above actual costs. Step 3. African leader approves the inflated contract and accepts predatory loan terms from foreign banks or the IMF/World Bank. Step 4. Foreign company pays kickback to African leader, usually 10 to 30% of total contract value deposited in offshore accounts. Step 5. Foreign company completes shoddy work, if they complete it at all, using cheap materials that fall apart within years. Step 6. African country is stuck with massive debt that takes 40 to 60 years to repay, substandard infrastructure that needs replacement soon, interest payments that consume huge portions of national budget, austerity measures imposed by lenders that hurt ordinary citizens. Step 7. When the country can't pay, foreign lenders seize assets, ports, mines, land, or impose structural adjustment that destroys local industries. Step 8. African leader retires wealthy, living in European mansions while the country suffers for generations. This is not conspiracy theory. This is documented fact. We've seen it from Lagos to Nairobi, from Kinshasa to Accra. Chinese-built railways in Kenya with inflated costs. European-built roads in Nigeria that crack within 2 years. Airport projects across the continent that come with debt that outlives the infrastructure itself. And the most painful part, it's all unnecessary. Traoré has proven it.
You see, Traoré has become a hero to Professor. I and him will drink coffee about Traoré. But he's doing two good things, that he becomes an international icon. A young guy, younger than many of us. Traoré has changed the price of uranium. France was buying uranium from Burkina Faso for $1 billion every year. He stopped the French to buy his uranium. Today, Burkina Faso is making 85 billion from the same resource. We are selling uranium here. We have no nuclear power. We are just talking, everything is nuclear. We are just selling. Whether the Chinese are paying us the best price or not, we don't know. We are also afraid. What if they walk out of this deal? But Traoré, a young man, a soldier, has changed his country. That's why Traoré is now building up factories, processing plants of agro-processing, because he has resources. We have these resources. When we say some of these things must not be said in the open, but let's drink coffee and talk about the future of our country, we don't listen to one another. So, Foreign Minister, may your door be open for further engagement, deeper engagement in the national interest of our country, so that we start running, because we are crawling. We must start running. And this country has an opportunity to penetrate Africa, to penetrate the world, but we must run in and we must talk to one another so that we get the country going. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Burkina Faso didn't just fall apart. It was systematically destabilised, and it's being kept that way. After independence in 1960, the French never really left. They controlled the money, they controlled the trade, they backed puppet leaders, and any time a nationalist rose up, they crushed him. In 1987, Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary who tried to make Burkina Faso self-reliant, was assassinated, backed by France, backed by Western interests. After that, it was handed back to the usual corrupt elites, and the country has been drained of its resources. used for its gold, for its cotton, for its cheap labour. In exchange, the people got poverty, repression. The entire Sahel region flooded with weapons, especially after the NATO invasion in 2011. When Libya collapsed, militants with arms flooded straight into Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. Western powers knew this would happen. They used it to justify counter-terrorism interventions. Another excuse to send troops into the region. Does this not give you a clue? Look, Financial Times, August. Burkina Faso nationalises 2 gold mines. Suddenly, 30th of fuck's sake. BBC. 27th of August, nationalises gold mines. 29th of August, UK government statement, civilian massacres and media suspensions. This is not internal chaos, this is externally controlled chaos. Terror groups don't appear from nowhere. They thrive when the state is weak, and the powers external are keeping it weak. Because the cycle of coups and militias and jihadists and poverty is not accidental. It is how control is being exercised without calling it colonization. Now that Burkina Faso is finally saying no to France, the narrative is suddenly changing. Suddenly it's unstable. Suddenly it's human rights abuse. Ibrahim Traoré took power in 2022 through a coup with popular support and pushed out French troops. He's been trying to cut ties with the West and nationalise gold production to keep the wealth in his country. They partnered with Russia deliberately for survival, not out of ideology. The Western media is ramping it up, calling him an authoritarian dictator and dangerous. Western intelligence is watching him closely, stirring instability, planting stories, quietly trying to isolate him with regional allies. Because he threatens old power systems, French colonial extraction, Western military bases where they shouldn't be, control over the gold of Africa. The West doesn't give a shite whether there's human rights abuse in Burkina Faso. It prefers them actually. They divide and conquer, chaos continues. It fears the order that might come without them.
They can't go a single day without talking about Burkina or the AES. It's impossible for them. And every time they try to spread information, to divide, to manipulate the youth. But it doesn't work anymore. I think people are aware enough. Now people have their eyes open. Through communication, they managed to rewrite history. And as for African history, they schemed everything to spread lies. As a result, some young Africans don't even know the history of Africa or what Africa has accomplished. Some don't even know that our grandparents fought, were put on the front lines as cannon fodder, and when they returned, they were killed like animals. Do people know that when France tested its first atomic bomb, it was black soldiers they placed nearby in the blast radius to see what would happen? Let's bring out the archives. Everything they've used against Africa is terrible. So all of this needs to be communicated so that young Africans understand, because there are still many who are asleep and continue to speak on behalf of the imperialists. Whatever they're told to say, they do it. Maybe it's because, well, they're given something, I don't know. But Africans need to understand their history and wake up. So that's our fight as well. My biggest regret is having spent a good part of my youth listening to radio stations like RFI and France 24. I've been in countries where those radio stations were shut down. But we would use apps to record their news broadcasts so we could listen. But at some point, something clicked. I started to realize that they were conditioning our minds to accept what they wanted. It's their narrative that they want us to learn. And since then, I've started to see things for what they are. And I understood that what they're doing is very dangerous. And today, more than ever, I realize that they have conditioned the minds, especially of Africans. So you can play a big role in awakening the consciousness of young people so that people understand how the world works and don't let themselves be led astray by those people. When we watch the parade of the machines that won the war, that is the T-34s up to the modern vehicles, it shows us the technological evolution of the Russian army, and it inspires us as well to get to work so that we can develop in the same direction. Relations are going very well, and I can say that for the past 2 years now, things have started off very well, and we are working on deepening the areas of defense and security, but also education, and later on, the commercial sector and other aspects. So, we have staggered the different areas so that we can exchange a lot and share many experiences, because we also have a lot to learn from Russia in the field of education, especially in the sciences. Now, it must be said that up to today, gold is the main export product in Burkina Faso. But we have set agriculture in motion, first for self-sufficiency, but also for foreign trade and export. The terrorists are reinforced by many foreign fighters who come from elsewhere, who are not, in fact. If I take the case of Burkina Faso, there are many criminals in Burkina Faso, but they are not Burkinabe. There are also trainers who come from many countries to teach them a lot of techniques.
But what is their interest?
It's not really terrorism, it's imperialism. Their goal is to keep us in a state of permanent war, so that we cannot develop and so they can continue to plunder our resources. So, they have every interest in bringing in specialists in mines to lay various types of mines and explosives experts. Today, the terrorists use drones to fight and everything. So, these are professionals from certain countries who come to teach them all of this. All of this is to keep us in a state of insecurity. But we are aware of the situation. We adapt each time to their methods of operation, and we will continue the fight until we have recovered the entirety of the Sahel. So, all the countries that are fighting today for their more economic independence, we are trying to collaborate better with these countries, because it is a form of oppression by imperialism. It is necessary for those who are oppressed to unite in order to confront this hegemony. So, we are moving forward gradually. There are many structures to put in place, and there are many areas that need to be upgraded in the 3 countries. Because, as you know, from an economic standpoint, we are not at the same level, and from a military perspective, there are many aspects to consider. We need to try to balance things out. And so, this requires the establishment of many structures and numerous meetings. And free movement requires a certain number of parameters to be put together. You must have seen that we did a lot of work to come up with a single security document for travel and everything. So it's evolving and things are going very well. I think they themselves contributed to diminishing their own influence because they have a paternalistic view of our relationship. You see, whenever you look at everything we do, every initiative we take, it's always about Russia. Someone speaks and they say they're influenced by Russia. Everything that happens, it's Russia. Why do they have their eyes closed like that? So Africans aren't capable of developing anything. Africans aren't capable of inventing, innovating, or taking initiatives. That's what we're fighting against. And look at their speeches. Look at their speeches. Even the French president, always in his speeches, says that young Africans are influenced by Russia. It's said, and if you listen to Western media, they spend all their time lying. And look today, the AES, which is a model that's starting to take shape, they can't go a single day without talking about Burkina or the AES. It's impossible for them. And every time they try to spread information, to divide, to manipulate the youth. But it doesn't work anymore. I think people are aware enough. Now people have their eyes open. Through communication, they managed to rewrite history. And as for African history, they schemed everything to spread lies. As a result, some young Africans don't even know the history of Africa or what Africa has accomplished. Some don't even know that our grandparents fought, were put on the front lines as cannon fodder. And when they returned, they were killed like animals. Do people know that when France tested its first atomic bomb?
When Ibrahim Traoré speaks, an entire generation awakens. Across Africa, youth are rallying behind his revolutionary message, Africa for Africans. No more foreign exploitation. No more neo-colonial control. From Burkina Faso to Mali to Niger, a movement is spreading like wildfire. The Traoré doctrine isn't just politics. It's a battle cry for sovereignty and dignity. Foreign bases, out. External control, gone. Economic exploitation, over. What we're witnessing isn't just change, it's transformation. Even in Ghana and Senegal, whispers of freedom grow louder each day. A new Africa is rising, where sovereignty is the weapon and unity is the shield.
There he is, the captain, Ibrahim Traoré. Are we going to meet him? So guys, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, who is he? Well, this isn't him, but let me explain to you who he is. Captain Ibrahim Traoré came into power. He seized power in 2022 in a coup, because he says that the current leader was not doing enough against the jihadist terrorism here in Burkina Faso. He's very famous around the world, but specifically in Africa, because he's anti-imperialist, anti-West, some would say, and he's helping the people of Africa. He's made ties with Russia, with the juntas in Niger and Mali, and he's made a formidable alliance in West Africa, although he's had, people say, 18 to 25 assassination attempts. Tried to kill him?
Yes, 3 years, 25 coups.
25 attempts, because some people don't want him in power. I think the West don't want him in power. Do people think he's like the new Thomas Sankara?
El Islam, Thomas Sankara.
So he cut ties with the West, he cut ties with France, he threw all the French troops out, and he even made Air France cancel all their flights to Burkina Faso, and he started its own Burkina Faso Airlines. We had the final security stop where they took us in for an interview, and they only asked one question. They asked, "Are you French?" I said, "No, I'm not French." "Do I look French?" He said, "Okay, you can go."
What would happen if the West insists on not recognizing Ibrahim Traoré as Burkina Faso's president? 10 countries have lately declared their recognition of Traoré as the country's rightful leader, despite the West's opposition to him. This shows how little the West's position matters to them. It doesn't matter if the West despises Traoré or not. No other country feels the same way. However, why is hatred for Traoré being pushed by the West? And when will this animosity end? Let's investigate. Burkina Faso was at the heart of a turning point in its diplomatic history on June 28, 2024. A ceremony that reverberated well beyond Ouagadougou's borders took place in the elaborate halls of the presidential palace. Envoys and dignitaries from 10 countries convened to formally acknowledge Ibrahim Traoré as the legitimate leader of the country. It was a statement that was significant not only symbolically, but also because it demonstrated Burkina Faso's tenacity in the face of enduring security threats and its growing influence in regional diplomacy. This dispute that we refer to as other than the violent, savage manifestation of imperialism, of neocolonialism, of the servitude that has been forced on us today. The event meant more to Traoré, a former military leader turned statesman, than just official recognition of his election win. It was an affirmation of solidarity and faith in Burkina Faso's future, which is paved with challenges from the outside world and internal conflict. The unwillingness of the Western countries to recognize Traoré's administration highlighted more profound geopolitical conflicts and African historical narratives of dominance. Yet, the decision of these 10 nations to stick by Traoré sent a clear statement. On the global scene, Burkina Faso's sovereignty and the democratic decisions made by its people deserve respect and acknowledgement. Both pundits and officials were speculating in the days before the ceremony. Would these countries support Traoré in spite of Western misgivings, going against the grain? That June afternoon's answer was clear-cut. As Traoré ascended the podium to address the assembly, representatives from nations in Africa, Asia, and Latin America stood shoulder to shoulder and applauded. The cheers that followed were as much in response to Traoré's remarks as they were to Burkina Faso's tenacity. After winning independence in 1960, the country has seen decades of political unrest, coups, and economic hardships. Every change in government, whether it came from military intervention or democratic elections, put Burkina Faso's stability and adaptability to the test. There was anticipation that a fresh chapter of stability and progress might be written now that Traoré was in charge. The attendance of international ambassadors from all parts of the world highlighted Burkina Faso's expanding diplomatic reach. The days when the country's internal problems and regional conflicts overshadowed its foreign relations are long gone. Burkina Faso was now exerting its position in the international arena and regaining its voice under Traoré's leadership. Human rights and election openness were the main reasons behind the Western country's rejection to recognize Traoré. These issues had long been contentious in African politics. Critics contended that claims of voter intimidation and irregularities tainted Traoré's rise to power, reflecting larger worries about the region's democratic processes. However, the focus of the countries that supported Burkina Faso on that particular day was on upholding the country's constitutional procedures and democratic institutions. It demonstrates their commitment to upholding the Burkinabe people's will and assisting them in achieving stability and progress. How did the entire ceremony go? At the presidential palace, there was a mix of festivity and seriousness in the air. Ambassadors convened to present President Traoré, with letters of credence came from Germany, Russia, Algeria, Rwanda, and other countries. The occasion demonstrated Burkina Faso's dedication to organizing such gatherings with elegance and hospitality. It was a ceremony steeped in history and diplomatic procedure. But why does the West not accept Traoré as president? Add your voice to the total liberation of Africa by leaving a comment in the comments section below.
My African youths, this is great news of the century. Once in a century, our African leaders start going what the youths of Africa wanted them to do in the name of the Africa Union. This is good news, right?
Let us hear the good news of the century. In an unprecedented show of continental unity, Africa has declared that any attack on Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso will be considered an attack on the entire continent. Sources close to the Pan-African Defense Coalition, a secret alliance of African nations, have confirmed that they are ready to mobilize a rapid response force to defend the revolutionary leader. From the deserts of the Sahara to the jungles of the Congo, military units are on high alert. Drones, cyber defense units, and elite commandos from over 30 nations are said to be standing by, awaiting a single command. Leaders across the continent have vowed, touch Ibrahim Traoré and you touch the eyes of the youths of Africa. Though unverified rumors even suggest hidden bases built for this exact scenario, the message is clear. African youths will not stand idle for the colonial masters to repeat what they did to our heroes, like Kwame Nkrumah, Sylvanus Olympio, Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, and others. Show support by saying in the comments that I love Ibrahim Traoré. This is our time. Always remember, one Africa, one people.
In the history of the world, there have been wars. And during the Second World War, people organized themselves to defend, all over the place. But there is a country that could not defend itself, which had to come and take our ancestors to go defend them. And today that same country wants to give us lessons. The pot calling the kettle black.
Burkina Faso doesn't make headlines, and maybe that's intentional. While the world looked away, this landlocked nation expelled a former empire, built its airplane, reclaimed its gold, and housed tens of thousands without foreign help. These aren't just amazing facts. They're warnings to a global system that never expected Africa to stand on its own. And today we are talking about 10 most shocking, unbelievable, and utterly real facts about Burkina Faso. 10. The country that declared independence. Twice. When Burkina Faso first gained independence in 1960, it was on paper. French flags came down, yes. New national symbols went up, yes. But what didn't change was the control. The language stayed French. The currency stayed French. The military relied on French advisors. Even most laws remained copied from Paris. It was independence in name only. But something rare happened in 2023. Something so bold, so fast, and so complete that it left even seasoned diplomats scrambling for words. Burkina Faso, without fanfare or ceremony, declared independence again. Not by issuing a speech or passing a symbolic resolution, but by kicking France out in real time. It started with a letter, a single-page notification sent to the Élysée Palace in Paris. All French troops must leave Burkinabe territory within 72 hours. This wasn't a press release. It was an eviction notice. No joint meetings, no compromise tables, no behind-the-scenes bargaining. French soldiers based at Camboinsen were told to prepare for immediate departure. Logistics officers from Burkina Faso's military were ordered to supervise their withdrawal, not as hosts, but as sovereigns reasserting control. Within hours, the French ambassador was also expelled. He had no warning. His expulsion was so sudden, the embassy had to request a safe exit under local police escort. Then came the shutdown of Radio France Internationale and France 24, both banned indefinitely for spreading colonial propaganda and falsehoods. But perhaps the most strategic move of all? Burkina Faso revoked all military accords signed with France, including the controversial defense agreements that allowed Paris to intervene inside the country without seeking approval from Parliament. Those agreements had stood for decades. With one decree, they were gone. This wasn't noise, it was precision. It wasn't a rebellion, it was control. And France, for once, could do nothing. Analysts across the Sahel called it the fastest full-scale severing of neo-colonial ties ever recorded in Francophone Africa. Most regional coups still retain France for technical assistance. Not here. Burkina Faso didn't just change direction, it cut the steering wheel loose. The question is, why? Why would a nation surrounded by enemies, internally unstable, and economically vulnerable risk cutting off its most powerful patron, because it had already done it once and paid the price for trusting the outcome. In the 1980s, under the revolutionary leadership of Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso took a similar stand. Sankara refused World Bank loans, kicked out exploitative foreign companies, nationalized land, vaccinated millions, and declared, "We must dare to invent the future." He even renamed the country from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, land of upright people. But in 1987, Sankara was assassinated. The killers were armed and supported by regional actors tied to France. After his death, his reforms were reversed, his allies were exiled or killed, and the nation was dragged back under the grip of old powers. Foreign influence crept back in, silently but steadily. So in 2023, the Second Declaration of Independence wasn't just political, it was historical. It was the unfinished mission of 1987 brought back to life. This time, however, there would be no compromise, no figurehead, no slow infiltration. The message was simple. We've seen what you do when we ask nicely. Now we're acting. And the reaction? Silence. France had no immediate replacement strategy. ECOWAS, normally quick to condemn, stayed muted. Even the United States issued only a soft statement of concern, because no one expected it. No one had a plan B. This was not a coup, not a rebellion. It was a redefinition of the relationship between a small African state and the former empire that once dominated it. But the most shocking part? Burkina Faso didn't fall apart after the exit. It stabilized. Within 6 months, border security improved. Attacks by insurgents decreased in key regions. Defense spending was redirected toward domestic production. And for the first time in 20 years, young Burkinabés said they could see themselves staying in the country, not fleeing to Europe. What the world witnessed wasn't a breakdown, it was a controlled detachment. Burkina Faso didn't slam the door. It locked it from the inside and quietly walked away. Now Burkina Faso is one of the few states that isn't controlled by anyone. Number 9. First homemade plane. When Burkina Faso closed the door on France, the world Institute, a regional hub for applied engineering. The world didn't laugh anymore. Why does this matter? Because no landlocked African nation had ever done it. Not Niger, not Chad, not even oil-rich South Sudan, and certainly not without foreign contracts, heavy debt, or decades of Western university partnerships. Burkina Faso skipped the process. It refused to beg. It simply decided to do what it wasn't allowed to do, and then it did it. And there's more. The aircraft wasn't a luxury prototype or a one-time proof of concept. According to internal planning documents later leaked by a senior official, it was the first in a planned fleet. Not fighter jets, not passenger liners, but multi-purpose utility aircraft designed for surveillance, border patrol, and logistical support. Aircraft that could fly over Burkina Faso simply turned its back on applause and built for function. They didn't need applause, they needed wings. And this changes the narrative. Because once a nation can build machines, fly them, repair them, and do it all without permission, it's no longer powerless, it's no longer isolated, it's no longer dependent. Number 8. West outside Koudougou. What had been a defunct UN storage site was suddenly bustling with new infrastructure, military tents, antenna masts, and armored vehicles with no markings. Western intelligence analysts were puzzled. They assumed it was a Burkinabe expansion project, until they noticed the vehicles were not French, not Chinese, but Russian Ural trucks, equipped with encrypted comms modules used by Russian advisors in Syria. A week later, Russian military trainers were spotted at Po National Military Academy conducting closed-door sessions on asymmetric defense, drone operation, and battlefield forensics. This was confirmed in a leaked internal bulletin shared by Burkina Faso's Joint Task Force, which noted that new doctrine training partners have arrived under direct executive authority. Who invited them? No public treaty was signed, no parliament was consulted, but it didn't matter. The authority came from the top, And unlike Western advisors, the Russians didn't come with demands for policy changes, media privileges, or economic concessions. They came to train, and they came to listen. But it wasn't just soldiers arriving. By mid-2023, Russian mining executives, representatives of Rosatom, and diplomatic trade envoys help from Russia, so be it. But unlike the colonial pacts of the past, these arrangements had no long-term chains, only functional leverage. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Number 7. The Gold Rush. If Russia's arrival rewrote Burkina Faso's defense script, it was gold that rewrote the country's economic future. For decades, Burkina Faso had been one of the top 5 gold producers in Africa. Its soil held enormous reserves, veins running deep through the Sahel, shimmering with promise. But if you followed the money trail, you'd notice something strange. The wealth never stayed. Multinational companies, mostly Canadian, Australian, and South African, operated the biggest mines. Their contracts, inked in English and French, were buried under layers of legalese and offshore entities. What they paid in taxes was often less than what they spent on corporate dinners. In 2021 alone, Burkina Faso exported over $4 billion worth of gold, yet more than 70% of those earnings never touched Burkinabe banks. That gold didn't build schools. It didn't fund hospitals. It vanished, repatriated to distant capitals, protected by favorable treaties signed long before today's generation came of age. But that changed in 2024, not with a press conference, but with a signature. In November of that year, the Burkinabe Council of Ministers approved the launch of the country's first ever national gold refinery. No foreign co-owners, no backdoor equity holders. A 100% state-owned facility capable of refining 400 kilograms of gold per day, the equivalent of nearly $30 million in processed bullion every week. Construction began immediately on the outskirts of Ouagadougou. The refinery wasn't just a factory, it was a statement, a structure of sovereignty. Every brick was laid with intention. No more raw exports, no more dependency on foreign smelters, no more invisible profits. But the real shock came weeks later. Burkina Faso didn't just open a refinery, it passed a law that banned the export of unrefined gold. That one clause, just a few lines buried in the mining reform bill, sparked panic across foreign corporations operating in the country. Overnight, their usual extraction routines became illegal unless they processed the gold locally. No more smuggling through Mali. No more airlifts under transit clauses. Everything had to be weighed, tracked, and refined on Burkinabe soil. Foreign executives protested. Some tried to negotiate, but they hit a wall of quiet resolve. Burkina Faso wasn't interested in arguments anymore. If companies didn't agree with the new terms, they could leave. And some did. In early 2025, at least 3 mid-sized firms halted operations, citing regulatory hostility. One of them, a Canadian junior mining firm, publicly accused the government of weaponizing sovereignty. But the government's response was simple. The resources in our soil belong to our people, not your shareholders. This wasn't nationalism, it was accounting. Because alongside the new refinery, a centralized gold registry was launched. Each shipment processed had to be logged, photographed, and digitally recorded. The data is fed directly into the Ministry of Finance in real time. The government could now see, hour by hour, how much gold was entering the system. No more blind estimates, no more underreporting. But the most interesting twist? Burkina Faso didn't use foreign banks to handle the gold proceeds. Instead, it routed sales through its postal bank, now restructured to act as a sovereign financial platform for gold-backed liquidity. The bank issued credit to local farmers, manufacturers, and cooperatives using gold reserves as collateral. In other words, gold was now circulating inside the economy, not just flowing out of it. And the effects were immediate. Road construction budgets doubled. Food import reliance dropped by 15% as agri-investments surged. Small factories reopened. And perhaps most notably, civil servant salaries were paid on time. A rare event in recent West African history. But this success did not come without cost. Several foreign embassies issued travel warnings, accusing the Burkinabe government of expropriating foreign interests. International mining forums began labeling the country a high-risk jurisdiction. The IMF downgraded the country's credit outlook. But here's the irony. Burkina Faso no longer needed them. It wasn't begging for foreign loans anymore. It wasn't sitting across from donors with a pleading bowl. It was sitting on a mountain of refined gold. And for the first time in decades, it knew exactly how much. No hidden exports, no foreign signatures, no loopholes, just a gold rush that didn't wave a single foreign flag. Number 6, 50,000 homes. Gold stayed in the country. And then something unbelievable happened. While the IMF was downgrading Burkina Faso's credit score, Western media fixated on the supposed economic vacuum left by French and American withdrawal. And while policy think tanks debated if Burkina Faso might collapse within 12 months, something was rising across the dry Sahel plains. Houses. Tens of thousands of them. Rows of modest but durable homes, quietly built in the very communities torn apart by war, displacement, and no ribbon-cutting ceremonies. No donor plaques, no international contractors, just neglect. By the end of 2024, over 50,000 new homes had been completed and handed over. Not promised, not proposed, but delivered. These weren't temporary shelters or plastic-roofed camps. These were reinforced, weather-resistant houses, constructed with compressed earth blocks, a local innovation that uses red clay, low-water cement, and native insulation techniques to keep interiors cool even in 40 degrees Celsius heat. And who funded it? Not the World Bank, not USAID, not the European Union. Burkina Faso funded it using its gold reserves and local tax collection. According to internal budget documents released quietly by the Ministry of Housing, nearly $180 million in state funds were redirected toward emergency housing between early 2023 and late 2024. The funding breakdown reveals that the government didn't borrow. It liquidated a portion of its newly refined gold through regional trade banks in Bamako and Lomé, converting assets into construction budgets without touching foreign aid pipelines. It wasn't just the financing that shocked observers. It was the speed and decentralization of the operation. The project didn't run from a single central office. Instead, it was coordinated through provincial councils and community task forces, each responsible for overseeing contractors, verifying material deliveries, and reporting progress weekly to a national housing command center. A digital platform built entirely by Burkinabe Wanty graduates from the University of Ouagadougou. Each home had to meet strict structural codes: water drainage trenches, thermally efficient bricks, secure roofing, and separate family sanitation units. The blueprints were standardized, but adapted to local terrain. meaning a house in Kaya looked different than one in Dori, not just architecturally but functionally. More importantly, the homes weren't handed out randomly. The government deployed a biometric beneficiary selection system, linked to national ID databases and refugee records, to ensure families displaced by insurgency, conflict, or drought were prioritized. There were no brokers, no NGO middlemen. Local elders and security officers verified occupancy. A report from the Pan-African Institute of Urban Policy called it the most efficient public housing distribution system seen in the Sahel in 2 decades. So, how did the world miss it? Because the world wasn't looking. The same institutions that publish multi-million-dollar development papers on housing insecurity in sub-Saharan Africa never sent a delegation to Burkina Faso between 2023 and 2025. The news agencies that filled columns with stories of refugee camps never showed up when the camps disappeared, replaced by real walls, doors, and keys. Some foreign agencies refused to believe the homes were government-built. In one bizarre incident, a European journalist interviewing families in Fada and Gorma accused them of being coached by officials after they described the process of moving in. The families simply handed him their property certificates, issued by the municipality, notarized by state attorneys. The reality on the ground was simple. For the first time in recent memory, the people of Burkina Faso were seeing the state in action, not just as a flag, but as a builder. And the impact has gone far beyond housing. Once families were resettled, school attendance surged in surrounding areas. Local markets reappeared. Crime dropped. Small farms resumed operations. In short, entire districts that had been ghost towns were being rehumanized. One such example is the Zitenga commune, once a hotspot for insurgent activity. After the housing wave, the region recorded a 75% decline in displacement and a 400% increase in school enrollment, according to Burkina Faso's National Bureau of Statistics. But what made it all possible wasn't concrete or land. It was the refusal to wait for permission. While the West was designing slide decks on capacity building, Burkina Faso was pouring foundations. While NGOs were launching awareness campaigns, Burkina Faso was handing out house keys. And while the world was still stuck on whether the country could survive without its old masters, it had already moved people back home. Number 5, the people's president. You can build houses. You can refine gold. You can even fly your planes. But none of it matters. Not really, unless people believe in the one leading them. And belief is not bought, it is earned. So while foreign observers were still wondering who was financing Burkina Faso's transformation, the people of the country already had their answer. They'd seen him kneel. Not in a palace, not in a mosque built for cameras, but in the dust, shoulder to shoulder with frontline soldiers during Tabaski, the most sacred holiday on the Muslim calendar. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the 34-year-old interim president, walked into a military prayer gathering in Gorsi, unannounced, dressed like everyone else. A plain white thobe, sandals, no vest, no military insignia, no podium, no speech, no ring of security. He knelt beside a young private barely out of his teens and an old sergeant missing a hand from an IED explosion. Those who were there say the silence was heavy, not from fear, but from recognition. The man giving orders from the capital had chosen to pray where the gunfire echoes, not in the safety of a high wall. And this wasn't an isolated gesture, it was part of a pattern, a leadership style that deliberately avoids distance. Traoré rarely speaks from the stage. He's known for showing up in unmarked vehicles to surprise inspections at military barracks. He eats in canteens, not private residences. Even in state meetings, he prefers handwritten notes over teleprompters. This isn't symbolism, it's a policy. His reasoning, shared during a closed-door discussion with regional governors, was simple. A leader should be able to walk freely among the people he claims to serve. If he cannot, then he serves something else. In a region where most heads of state move with a convoy of tinted SUVs and layers of body armor, Traoré's minimalism feels almost surreal. But it's not naivety. It's a strategy, one that recognizes the real war isn't just being fought with bullets, but with trust. And trust, in Burkina Faso, had been broken long before he arrived. Years of coups, broken promises, and distant elites left citizens with little faith in government. Presidents came and went, but their hands rarely touched real soil. They gave speeches about agriculture from five-star hotels. They declared war on insurgency from the safety of foreign visits. Traoré flipped the script. Number 4. A replacement of the World Bank. The typical script is familiar. An African nation in crisis applies for funding. The World $2 million loans had been issued, the vast majority under $500. The bank's internal data, released in a quarterly transparency bulletin, showed something astonishing. A default rate of just after the launch of its state-backed gold notes. The government understood that national self-financing was only half the equation. If wealth remained trapped inside the country, the economy would stagnate. Burkina Faso needed a gateway to the world, and it needed one without begging for port access. So it turned inland. The government entered a series of high-speed negotiations with neighboring Togo, Ghana, and Côte d'Ivoire, but it wasn't asking for charity. It came with leverage, refined gold, cotton, lithium reserves, and regional security guarantees. In exchange for secure trade corridors and prioritized customs clearance, Burkina Faso offered intelligence cooperation, counter had before. Instead of being squeezed by international shipping giants, they now had control over their cargo schedules, insurance terms, and freight returns. Number 2. Traoré. It wasn't firepower that redefined Burkina Faso. It wasn't propaganda, sanctions, or a surge in foreign investment. It was a map. Not the kind found on Google. Not the kind with tourist trails or satellite overlays. This was a strategic operations map, drawn on craft paper and pinned with thumbtacks according to insiders, showing every mine, every dry port, every rail junction, and every insurgent corridor, all plotted not for show, but for action. And at the center of it stood a man most of the world had never heard of until late 2022. Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Not a career politician, not a global diplomat, just a 34-year-old artillery officer who had studied geology in university, knew the terrain like the back of his hand, and understood something most seasoned analysts didn't. Whoever controls the flow of logistics, gold, grain, and guns controls the outcome of the war. And so while the world obsessed over who fired first in Burkina Faso's 2022 military shakeup, they missed the more important detail: how it was done. Traoré didn't take power with tanks in the street. He didn't storm parliament or issue fiery manifestos. According to first-hand accounts from military insiders, he started with coordination, not confrontation. He quietly gathered young officers across 4 regional commands and presented them with a comprehensive operations map. The brilliance wasn't just in the geography, it was in the timing. The coup was executed in less than 12 hours. Key installations were secured simultaneously. Communications were uninterrupted, and, most critically, not a single civilian casualty was reported. In a region haunted by bloody transitions, this was surgical. But the real coup wasn't military. It was conceptual. Most regimes take power, then figure out what to do. Traoré was different. He took power because he already had a blueprint. That blueprint wasn't about staying in office. It was about restructuring the country's infrastructure, economy, and sovereignty layer by layer. Within weeks of taking office, he assembled a team of low-profile technocrats, local engineers, and logistics officers, not politicians. They began to implement the map. Every policy since has followed the lines he drew. Reclaim the gold, establish national refining, disconnect from French military intelligence, build dry ports, connect rail nodes to the Atlantic through bilateral treaties, launch a national banking system that functions beyond foreign debt structures, establish data sovereignty through trade analytics, integrate agriculture, military logistics, and infrastructure planning under a unified state platform. Each step sounded impossible until it wasn't. Each goal was met not through announcements, but through quiet, relentless execution. But how does a junior officer, with no presidential lineage or billionaire backing, pull this off? The answer lies in how he built trust. And he gained that trust with actions. Number 1. Safety. To the casual observer, Burkina Faso looks like a country at war with insurgents. But look closer, and a more unsettling truth emerges. Burkina Faso isn't just fighting armed groups. It's resisting an entire system designed to keep countries like it exactly where they are. Insurgency is real in the Sahel, but it's not the full picture. The attacks, the chaos, the displacement, they're symptoms. The disease runs deeper. For decades, security in Burkina Faso wasn't about safety. It was about control. Who could move troops where? Who got to sell weapons under the guise of peacekeeping? And who received counterinsurgency funding as a leash to dictate policy? Every foreign military base, every surveillance drone in the sky, every aid convoy branded with Western flags was part of that system. A system that thrives on instability, because instability justifies permanent dependency. As long as the threat never ends, neither does the need for outside help. That's the game. But what happens when a country like Burkina Faso decides to stop playing? We've seen it unfold across this story, not through speeches, but actions. They expel foreign troops. They shut off French intelligence channels. They stop importing pre-written military doctrines from think tanks thousands of miles away. They build their air surveillance systems, their own drone programs, their own territorial command structures. And they don't just resist militarily, they challenge the logic behind the entire global response to insurgency. Because what Burkina Faso is saying, in silence, in steel, in bricks, in rice, in railways, is this: we will no longer be defined by a problem we didn't create. Burkina Faso is not pretending that the old system can be reformed. It's replacing it. And that terrifies the institutions built to enforce the illusion of progress. The banks, the NGOs, the media houses, the embassies. Because once people believe they don't need those intermediaries anymore, the game ends. The insurgents still attack, yes, but the country fights them on its terms now. And so far, they are doing better than before. Now let's answer the million-dollar question. Should people visit Burkina Faso? And why visit Burkina Faso? Well, because it's not performing for tourists. It's performing for itself. And in doing so, it's created one of the most authentic, self-determined, and quietly revolutionary places on Earth. Here, you won't find fake smiles and curated resorts. You'll find real people, rebuilding a country on their terms, and welcoming you not as a customer, but as a guest. You'll see living heritage in Tibel, urban reinvention in Ouagadougou, resistance etched into gold, and hope beating under silence. And maybe you'll walk away knowing you didn't just visit another country. You witnessed a new chapter of Africa before the rest of the world could catch up. Did you know all this about Burkina Faso? Are you surprised? Let us know in the comments section. Has Burkina Faso made it? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious blacks have been.
Thank you, amazing people, for watching the clips. It's now my time to interpret whatever has been said in these clips. And guys, believe you me, for decades, for so many years, Africa has had the same promises, and that is foreign aid will develop you. Democracy first, prosperity later. Security partnership is going to stabilize your region. Those are the promises that we have always been hearing. But when it comes to the people in the ground now, many countries have stayed poor. Many resources have been left. Many debt are still ongoing, and insecurity has grown, and that is because of what they tell outside there. So now we have Ibrahim Traoré, a very young, confident, and unapologetic leader. What he does is that his speeches are not polished for Western audiences. No smiling handshakes when it comes to him attending this global summit, of which nowadays he doesn't even go. His message is simple: Africa must control its own resources, its own destiny. That is what he is dreaming of. So for many Africans, this message eats deep into our veins, deep into our brains, because it's what we have always wanted to hear for generations. So why do you think that Africans believe that Ibrahim Traoré is a symbol? Probably. So this entire story is not just about Burkina Faso. It's a story about Africa, across the entire Africa, where young leaders or young people of Africa, they are really tired of leaders who answer to foreign interests. They are tired of governments who are dependent on IMF loans. Young leaders of Africa, young people of Africa, they are tired of security forces trained abroad, but they are unable to protect our own people. So Ibrahim Traoré is speaking the language of sovereignty. He is talking about reducing foreign military interferences or presence. He is speaking about building a regional African alliance. He is talking about taking control of natural resources within our Africa, Mama Africa. So to many of us, he represents respect, that is self-respect. He represents defiance, and he represents something that we talk about, a break from post-colonial obedience. So, my good people, Ibrahim Traoré sees all these things in them. So why do you think the West is nervous? Why do you think, guys? Now I want us to talk about the uncomfortable truth, and that is the West does not want to get nervous, but they are nervous because Traoré looks like he's going to succeed in most of these things. And if Ibrahim Traoré specifically succeeds, other African leaders may follow the suit and start the resistance. If he succeeds, foreign military influence is going to shrink probably. If Ibrahim Traoré succeeds, resource contracts could be renegotiated, of which the West doesn't want that. And also, the old power dynamics could probably collapse. So by any chance, they don't really want the success of Ibrahim Traoré. So what they are doing is that the Western governments are framing their concerns as democratic backsliding, instability, military rule. You see those narratives that they come up with, and then they instill in people to make them believe that, there is instability there, or they even cause the instability and start blaming the leader that, is not singing whatever they want or writing speeches in their interests. So in that case, Africans, what we believe the West is facing is that they are probably losing the control of Africa, which we like it, by the way, because that's their fear. So what I really thank God about is the impact of the media space, because that is where we get the raw and unfiltered news. Before, we used to get filtered news. So the rise of Ibrahim Traoré is not powered by the mainstream media, for your information. It's powered by social media platforms like YouTube, TikTok, X, name them, WhatsApp. because his clips, his raw and unfiltered clips go viral on these social media spaces, and we get to hear about them. But before, we could actually hear about his speeches from mainstream medias, and that is after they have edited them and put out the part that they want us to listen to. So clips of his speeches are going viral each and every day, and when actually social media users, when they come out and share them, it becomes a wave and people discuss it. And that is how it gets to be popular. That's how it gets the visibility. So as I speak at the moment in the year 2026, we are in the era of digital pan-Africanism, where these narratives are no longer being filtered through the Western mainstream media. And of course, once people control the story, power will start to shift. That's the game. And the big question here is, because people could actually ask themselves questions like, is Ibrahim Traoré perfect? No, he's not perfect in any way. Is the military rule risky? What do you think? Probably you could tell me in the comment section. But what we should ask ourselves is that if the old system worked, why are we still poor? If it worked, why are we still poor? Why is it that there is insecurity, and why are we still dependent and not independent? So the support for the African president Ibrahim Traoré is not a blind loyalty. It's a protest vote against decades of disappointment. Ibrahim Traoré represents more than a man. He represents a mood, a rebellion of thought, a generation that is saying enough is enough, and that when many people stop believing in the older story or in the older orders, the world has no choice but to pay attention, which is happening now. So the real question that we should ask ourselves at the moment is, will Africa finally write its own future, or will history repeat itself? What do you think, guys? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Kindly like, subscribe. Your support is highly appreciated. I'll see you in the next video.